Welcome to Enterprise Services Client Briefing Centre. Please welcome to the stage Jeremy Suddards.
Hi, good morning. Nice to see you all.
Jeremy Suddards is Vice President, GM Financial Services Industry. You were listening to our guest there and nodding your head. I could see your agreement there.
I think the fact is that quite often technology over the years has been used to help enable or make businesses work. But in all honesty, in the last 5 years, it's actually completely changing business models. And we spotted this sort of 3 or 4 years ago, particularly in London with all of the fintechs. I mean, there's sort of 80,000 people working in fintech in London now, billions of pounds being invested. And what that means is some of the technology is really changing the ways that many of the organisations work. And in some areas that's an opportunity, in some areas it's a threat. And so we looked at it as a way of really helping our customer to start to look at some of those different models, some of those different technologies, so they can work out where they are on the journey. So we created a fintech model, really helped our customers to look at technology from the 4 big trends around security, cloud, mobility, and analytics. But much more importantly, letting customers look at it through their own lenses, their own optics. So looking at business operations, looking at payments, looking at customer. But as I say, also with new business models.
What should banks be doing then to be proactive about approaching this?
Well, I think the banks really just have to look inside and say, are we ready? But they also have to really look outside. And I think they have to understand that to be successful in the future, they're simply not going to be able to develop internally and work out how to actually make the most of the opportunities there. I think the big opportunity and threat for most of the organisations is the Open Banking and Payment Services Directive 2 that's coming. If banks move really quickly on that, it's a huge opportunity to really move themselves up the value chain. If they don't, it becomes a piece of regulation where they have to open up their entire systems, the transaction, the account, the details, and actually the smaller fintechs will really come in, and the next generation banks take that data, take that value, and they'll steal that mark. So it's really important that all banks, financial services organisations really look at that, work out what the strategy is, because there's a huge opportunity.
Have you got any examples of that?
Yeah, I think some of the work that we've done, as I say, I mentioned cloud earlier. So if we look at the adoption of cloud in the big investment banks, the adoption of cloud that we see across insurance companies. So we're just in the middle of migrating all of Aon's insurance countries, 9 countries across Europe onto a very large cloud. Deutsche Bank, another one. A year ago, 2 years ago, really this stuff was still pretty much leading edge, and you can see it moving down the line, and it's becoming the enabler for all of the other technologies. So actually, new business models are fundamentally built on cloud because it gives that elasticity. So you'll see that in the model as you go through it.
And in terms of scale, this applies to huge banks that you've described, Deutsche Bank, insurance groups like Aon, but also this same model applies much further down the chain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think what the interesting thing about the business model or some of the big technologies is that all organisations have the same challenges. Whether it's a cyber issue, we've seen a huge amount in the press over the last 2 or 3 weeks on that piece, or whether it's enabling. Everyone has to look at that. No one's in a situation where they can sit on an island and say, you know what, it's going to be okay, because the fundamental changes, the business model is what's going to disrupt the business, not the technology. And what's being driven by the business model is the technology that underpins it.
So in terms of the latest hot topics that people are talking about, give us an insight into what all the conversations are. Yeah,
well, I think we mentioned the API stuff at the moment. That's probably the single biggest conversation that we're having in the C-suite at the moment. The other one around cyber, the investments that you can just see the governments in all of our countries making is huge. And we heard Andre yesterday talking about the highly organised engagements that we're seeing. And as you start to open up your banking platform with APIs, with the open banking standard, you're essentially making a huge amount of more access points for threats. So it's a really important thing to look at. This isn't only about kind of doing stuff at the front end. The way you manage your IT, the way you have to throttle the engagement, the way you have to make sure it's secure, changes hugely as well. So really it is a multidisciplined approach, and we're in a great position to help clients with that.
Explain for me the Payment Services Directive. I've heard a bit about this, but I wasn't quite sure of the detail.
So essentially, the Payment Services Directive is directing all financial services organisations to allow access via an API to the base transaction data. So that allows a fintech or a next generation bank to partner essentially with an existing organisation, or actually just disaggregate completely. So actually, if you want a relationship with Amazon and you want to buy something via Amazon, you don't necessarily need to go through a credit card provider or banking provider. So that really is a way of the banks, of the regulation opening up banking, because it's been a very closed shop for many, many years. But as I say, the great opportunity there is the opportunity for banks, financial services, insurance, to start to partner with some of those much more innovative, much smaller organisations. Because actually, if you can increase your ecosystem and you can increase the way your products are sold, it's really a huge new marketplace as opposed to just the person that you might be marketing your current account today. So that's going to happen. So there's no question about whether that's an if. So as I say, the point is, if you can make that movement very quickly and you can be on the front foot, we're seeing many of the next generation banks, the Monzos of this world, just building their operating model based upon open APIs. That means they can white label, they can work with leisure partners, they can work with travel partners, they can work with insurance partners, and that starts to become a really very sticky engagement if you're a customer. So the worst thing that could happen, of course, is the banks say, well, hey, we'll open up our platforms, and actually all the value conversations, really where you can make money, start to be taken away by the fintech. So really, many of the banks, the building societies, the insurance companies, and we're having great conversations, are really wanting to throw themselves into this because it could absolutely change banking and turn it on its head.
And I think we all understand opening APIs does mean that complexity and that speed is improved, but it also sounds risky.
I think it is risky, as I say, because you are opening up. You're essentially taking something that's had a very strong perimeter around it for many, many years, and saying, I'm going to give you access to essentially my crown jewels, my customer data, actually the key platforms. So how you do that's really, really important. So really understanding how you bridge that old to the new, as you mentioned earlier, making sure your existing environments are secure. But as I say, the banks have to do this. So it's no good kind of thinking, well, we'll just tick a box for the regulators. The idea is really to make an investment in this.
But there are challenges ahead, infrastructure challenges.
Yeah, huge infrastructure challenges. The amount of impact that actually could be made upon someone's existing infrastructure when you're opening it up to not just developers, but essentially anybody to start that development is huge. So I think that traditional, how do I scale my infrastructure? How do I manage the peaks? You're not going to know that your peak happens to be the end of the month or the end of quarter, because actually some of those peaks might be something that you can't see or foresee. So really, that challenge and that hygiene really changes the way development. So things like DevOps and Agile become hugely important when you're thinking about how you're engaging on those kind of conversations.
So that's the overview. Those are the problems. Let's go on to the solutions.
Yep.
How can enterprise services help?
Yeah, so we've spent a lot of time over the last 12 months looking at really where our existing assets are within the business, and certainly some of our partner assets as well. So certainly the starting point is always about advice. So how can we help you diagnose where you are on the journey? How open are you already? How much work needs to happen? Actually, are you ready for starting the journey? And so we have a diagnostic tool and diagnostic process that allows you to really understand your own organisation. The second part is really around development. And for us, development is all about sort of new style of IT. We have a very large digital transformation centre up in Newcastle, over 1,000 agile developers, and all of this type of work around PSD2 and open banking and APIs will be done in an agile environment. So we have a great opportunity to help customers locally actually develop that and actually get in a good place. And then the final part is around managing. Once you have your platform and you've developed that platform, it needs managing, it needs feeding, it needs watering, it needs evergreening. And so again, we're working with some of the biggest partners, people like CA in this space, to make sure that you have a platform that is integrated into your existing environment, but is as open as possible, to make sure you can really take advantage of all the various opportunities and that ecosystem of partners out there. So really those three areas: advising our customers on how to start, developing for them, and then managing that at the end of the process.
And identifying those potential solutions. That's the key, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and we're in a very privileged position. We sit in the centre of the IT ecosystem. We see a huge amount of partners on a day-to-day basis, a huge amount of customers on a day-to-day basis. So we're very happy to come and advise and give customers some viewpoints.
Jeremy Suddards, it's a great pleasure to talk to you today. Thanks very much indeed for talking to us. A fascinating talk, I'm sure you'll agree. Thank you.